Hi there, welcome back and thank you for joining me for today's video blog. This morning, just to let you know what to expect, I'm off to see a very good friend of mine, Tasha. I was trying to think this morning how long we've actually known each other. I think it's going to be 12 years this year. We share the same surname but we're not related. Her married name is Fisher. I'm off to see her this morning for a cup of tea and a conversation to talk about something that's incredibly personal to her, but I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people out there. We're going to be talking about the death of her dad, which is almost 3 years ago to the day. She's very bravely said that she will speak about this, knowing that there's going to be a camera there. I'm hoping as the conversation goes along we'll forget about the camera. I suddenly feel a huge responsibility to handle this the right way. I'm not going to plan what I'm going to say or ask her. I just want our conversation to evolve naturally. So I'm hoping by the end of the video we will maybe help other people. Maybe there'll be some tips with how to navigate your way through different stages of grief, or maybe it will just simply be enough for someone out there to know that they're not the only person who feels the way they do. Who knows, but I think it's an important discussion to have. So that's where I'm going. I shall see you later, and thank you for watching.
This is my truth. Tell me the truth. Tell me my truth. Tell me what the truth feels like. This is my truth.
So, this is Tash. Tash, this is everybody. I've already told them what we're going to be talking about today. So, first of all, thank you for doing this, because I know that it's sensitive and personal, but I really think that it could potentially help people. So, let's start. I'll tell you what I found in my kitchen drawer.
Oh, thanks for making me cry already.
I found the order of service from Tasha's daddy's funeral, which is almost 3 years ago. I don't know why I kept it, but I did. And it says in here that he loved life, loved his family, loved spending time with friends, and loved being outdoors in the sun, and he loved patterned waistcoats and Hawaiian shirts. And it also says why everybody loved him, why he made them laugh, his Irish charm, and that no one had a bad word to say about him. And you know what, it's very easy when people do pass away for people only to remember good stuff, but I've met your dad on many occasions, and I believe that. I believe that no one would have a bad word to say about him. So that's how God knows how your mum summarised in a few paragraphs about him for this, but what do you want to say about the kind of man that your dad was?
He was just lovely. He was a really lovely man. He was a very honest man, very hard-working, very, very, very hard-working. He would have about 3 or 4 jobs on the go, would always want to provide, just really, really fantastic work ethic. So fun, so funny. I think a lot of my silliness in life is definitely from him. He would stand in a corner, observe a room, see what was going on, and then he would walk into the room and go, yeah, but can you kick your leg up high like this? And then he'd walk out.
Kick his leg up high?
Well, he'd kind of clench his shoulders to meet the foot, but he would walk in, kick his leg, and walk out, or go, Tash, can you balance like this? And then like he'd just stand in the room and hold a balance. So yeah, he was he's a very, very good, honest man. That's how I remember him being very good to help anyone out that needed help. Would always try and find solutions to things. He was a very practical man. If there was ever anything that I did ever want to talk through or want to kind of use him as a sounding board, he'd always kind of go away and think about it, and he'd have a little tidbit of information or something that he might give back.
Was that the same growing up as well? Like when you were going through teenage years, or?
Yeah, he was. I mean, I was always probably... No, I don't want to say I was closer to one parent than another. I'm incredibly close to my mum, and I was very, very, very close to my dad. We just always connected on very different things. He loved exercising, he loved going to the gym. That's something that I began to enjoy as I became a teenager, so that was something we could very much talk about and get on with, and we'd set each other challenges to see if we could do a tricep dip on our toes, and he'd read an article and be like, I'm going to try this, and he'd send me a picture because he'd seen an ab roller in a charity shop, so he'd bought it, so then we'd try and do it on the kitchen floor. Like, it was just a joke, and it was just very fun. I was very lucky that I did and was able to get him around my little finger, very much. In the same way that my girls get their dad around their little finger, and in the same way that my eldest wrapped her granddad around her little finger. Like, he always, I think I was very lucky that I was a little girl, so I had a, I was lucky to have that. But yeah, he was a good man. He was loved by everybody. I mean, his funeral was packed.
I know. I didn't think I was going to get a seat.
No, and I remember arriving at the church, and the funeral director, Michael, who was a good friend of Dad's, one of Dad's many jobs and help outs, was being a pallbearer for him. And he said, "Oh, it is busy in there," and I actually found it very overwhelming walking in on that day, and just overwhelming, but amazing to walk in and see hundreds of people, and I just kind of had a smile around the room, and there was almost too many people to take in, because I was sat there, there are so many people here. It was a wonderful, overwhelming, and very sad, but how lovely, and I felt that was very deserved. I felt that he deserved to have that many people there, because he was a good man. So it was really lovely that they were all there.
So going back a little bit from obviously that day, he was poorly for a while, but then he sort of bounced back a bit, didn't he? Tell us a little bit about maybe what he was ill with and that kind of journey.
So he had a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, so that's a blood cancer, and with his type of cancer, it wasn't a tumour that's cuttable. It was a load of cells that all kind of needed to be, I hope I'm explaining this right, that all needed to be essentially attacked with the chemo to disperse, and then essentially flush out your system. I'm very loosely medical.
I don't have anything to add.
Medical terms. So yeah, I had no idea what going for chemo meant and what that sort of thing would entail. You kind of day trip into a hospital and have this chemo and go home again, and yeah, just very, very bizarre world that I was suddenly entering into, and these amazing people going in, week out, and getting their treatment and living with cancer, and going through those cycles of having the cancer, having a bad few days, having a good few days, and then the cycle starting again. And it's a very relentless cycle that goes on depending on what your treatment is and for the length that your treatment needs to last. Just things that I didn't realise that chemo would be sat there going through a tube, and how toxic chemo is. It's a wonderful treatment and can be hugely successful for people, but you don't realise until you're going. I didn't realise until we were going through it just how poorly that treatment can make you, and how sick you have to be to try and get through to the other side to get well again. And that was quite a weird thing to see and watch. And for him, it was very successfully. Effectively got rid of the cancer. He went into a remission. He was in one of the smallest percentages for it ever coming back. The trial that he was on, that was all a success. It all worked. So we were kind of like, wow, that's worked. Wow, what do we do? What do you kind of do now? So then he was essentially fine and okay until he started to get some sort of symptoms again. As he was going back for a checkup, and he knew that something's not right. It was around the time that I was going for like a 3-month scan with my second pregnancy, and I just remember having this thought of, it's going to come back and he's going to die and I'm going to have a baby, and I'm not somebody who would tend to go to a worst case scenario. I always like to think positively, think how can we fight through this. That's a terrible phrase. But something in my head went, I just think this is, if he's going to get this again, it's going to be bad, because he didn't cope well with it the first time. He's a terrible patient. He was a terrible patient with a cold. Awful patient with cancer. But I don't think he can be a good patient with cancer. I don't know. So that was always in my head. I was like, I think that's what's going to happen. He's going to have it again. And I'm going to be pregnant, and I think he's going to die, and I think I'm going to have a baby. So that was quite a tough thing. And
so that's a whole nother level, or a whole nother layer on top of everything else. The fact that he died in the January and Lily was born in March. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how, it might be impossible to say, but how on earth do you go through something that big whilst you're hormonal and pregnant and everything you just said about knowing that you're going to then have your baby without your dad there? Were you able to properly grieve, or were you focused solely on having to not only look after your family and Daisy, who's your firstborn, but also focus on the next birth, or so much happening at such a small period of time?
I think saying I found it easy isn't probably not the right thing to say, but you have no choice but to get through these things at the time when they're going on. If you have a funeral to plan, you've got something to focus on. If you're planning on having a baby, you've got something to focus on. So you can suddenly very easily busy yourself with loads and loads of other things. You find yourself in a strange kind of situation where people would come around the day after it happened, and those following couple of weeks before the funeral. And you suddenly find yourself as the grieving family consoling everybody else, and actually that's a lot easier to do.
Right.
So people would come in and they would instantly burst into tears, and quite rightly so, because it was very, very sad. But it just kind of made it easy for us to go, don't worry, let's cup of tea. so you then find that you're making cups in just...
If in doubt, have a cup of tea.
If in doubt, have a cup of tea. So it had probably been a good 3.5 weeks from leaving home, my London home, to then coming back after a funeral. I can remember as we left the house to go to the hospital, and I just turned to him and I went, I think I'm going to be coming back here after a funeral. I don't think I'm going to be coming back here with good news. So then to then be making that journey back was very, 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 very odd, and just kind of getting home and going, well, what do we do now? And just kind of carry on. There's a baby coming in a couple of months. We get on with it. Just weird kind of situations that I would find myself in. And we used to have a big wall planner in our kitchen so we can see where various people are working, travelling over the year, which would normally have always been set up at the beginning of January. So we're now at the beginning of February, so I needed to start charting out everybody's birthdays and holidays, and I remember going through it, and then we get to September, and I was like, what do I do now? What am I supposed to write September the 9th? I always have Dad's name on the calendar. What?
Yeah.
Do I not put his name down on the calendar? What do I... And just found myself at a real stumbling block that night coming home, going, well, what do you do with things like this? What do I write him down? Do I not? I don't know. And actually, very lucky, a friend of mine knocked at the door at that moment, and she had lost her mum from cancer a few years before that, and it was just the right friend knocking on the right door. I think exactly the right moment.
Yeah.
And she gave me a hug. I was like, Liz, what do I don't know what to do about. Should you put it down? It's his birthday. You put it down, and you're right, but it's your dad's birthday. So I was like, I should write it down. I should write it down. So I think I will forever always have Dad's name on September 9th because that's his birthday. But yeah, it's funny. I don't remember much about that those first few weeks home, but I can just remember sitting at the kitchen table just going, well, how does life go on now when something so silly as writing a name on a calendar for everybody's birthdays over the year, I kind of found a stumbling block, and then I think I just put everything else in the back of my head and just got on with the day-to-day things of life and becoming very fat and very pregnant.
So when was there a time when, or has there been a time when you can no longer just do the day-to-day? Is there a time when it surfaces? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me it came a few months after Lily was born, and I just sort of noticed that if people were texting me, I wasn't really wanting to engage, and I just was a bit, well, you're asking how I am. I'm fine, I've got a baby. I don't want to talk. And I just noticed that I was not responding to things as I perhaps would have done a couple of years before or a year before. I was very cross. I would drop a pen on the floor and I would go nuts. That pen dropping on the floor was the worst thing that had happened to me that day, that week. And teeny tiny, everything was just becoming very overwhelming. But I was like, no, just carry on. But Lily was probably about 4 months old. And yeah, I'd wake up with pains in my hand. So I wouldn't be able to do that first thing in the morning. And I thought I had a rheumatoid problem, an arthritis problem, and probably something else horrendous that was probably going to kill me. And thought that maybe I should see a doctor about it. And around the same time as that, I was round at my friend's house, lived across the road, and she had another friend around, and her dad had died a few months before my dad. And it was during a cup of tea and biscuits at hers that I don't want to keep saying I had a breakdown. I just found myself in situations where I couldn't hold back tears anymore. I think I'd got to a point where I'd done quite a good job of getting through each day and week fine.
Yeah.
And then we were talking, and during this cup of tea, I started crying and tried to stop myself crying. Didn't want to be crying, and yeah, it was her friend who had suggested that maybe I go and seek some counselling. So I was like, well, maybe. I don't think I'm that bad, but okay, maybe. So I had my doctor's appointment anyway, and so I thought, well, I'll mention it as part of that appointment. And at the doctor's, I then had another moment because Lily pooed outside of her nappy, down her clothes. Before we went in, there was nowhere to change in the doctor's. As he opened the door, I go in, very, very frazzled. A very kind doctor, did not judge, which was good. Let me change her in the room, which I'm sure wasn't very pleasant for him because it was an outfit change poo. And so sat down and I spoke to him about pain in my hands. And I think I brushed aside also about the fact that my dad had died, I'd had a baby. Whilst having those, you know when you don't think you're crying, but you realise that you're kind of doing this.
Right.
All the time. And I said to him about my hands, and he said that there was a family history of rheumatoid issues, so perhaps to get that looked at. And it was him that had said that my hands were probably very symptomatic to how I was feeling, as opposed to a fundamental problem with my hands.
Yeah.
And he suggested that I have a referral for some counselling. He knew of 2 different types of counselling. So I was sort of rushed through quickly, because if you're within a year of having a baby, you're at a higher risk of having postnatal depression, so therefore you will get referrals and get seen perhaps a little bit quicker than other people. And so I had 6 sessions with a general counsellor, and then 15 sessions with a specific grief counsellor at a brilliant charity locally to where I am here. I didn't really know what to expect with counselling. My very first counselling session I sat in and I just burst into tears immediately and spoke with her. And it's just a very good and safe way to be able to talk about things that you don't want to talk about. And you find yourself in the sessions, actually, I think in my first sessions, I didn't really cry about my dad. I was crying about loads of other things as well. And halfway through the session I said to her, I don't understand why I'm crying about this, because I'm supposed to be sad because my dad has died, and I don't understand why I'm crying about that thing. Why am I crying about that? And she noticed that a lot of maybe my other things that I was maybe struggling with were actually all very related to grief.
Right.
Because I noticed that I was crying in a session about a time I'd lost my voice, I had vocal surgery, and I just sat and cried at this woman I thought I was going to see to help cure me of my grief with my dad.
But that was a traumatic time for you, though.
It was.
So, like you say, there's a common thread.
Yeah, there was, and I had never really thought about it like that. And seeing how I reacted and hadn't maybe dealt with that.
Right.
To then feeling a loss of identity, becoming a mum and becoming Daisy's mum and not being Tasha anymore. And then having a loss of a parent, and how 3 very separate things all have a very common thread, and how you deal with one thing begins to inform how you might deal with another thing. So because I would cope through one situation, cope through another situation, my then default was to cope and do that. So yeah, I found that quite odd in that session, that I seemed to be crying about something that I didn't think I was supposed to be seeing her about.
It's like you open up the can of grief in general.
Yeah, so it was like, once I'd allowed myself to speak to somebody about anything, who wasn't going to judge me and didn't know me and didn't know anything else, then kind of opened and paved a way for other things. And she kind of highlighted how I reacted and responded to things that I would do in my day-to-day life, and how I would maybe punish myself or kind of beat on myself. Things that I might say to myself or do, and all the things I was trying to fill my day with whilst trying to avoid thinking anything else. And I'd be like, oh no, well, I've got to do this, I've got to get all those things, and I haven't got time. No. There isn't any time for me actually to have any time for myself because I've got to do that, and I've got to do that by certain. And she's like, what do you mean you've got to? What do you mean you've got to do? What happens if you don't do the washing at that point? Well, I'll probably just do it tomorrow, won't I? So she's like, well, yes, you haven't got to do it
Right.
at that point. Try and flip it around and say, well, I'm going to try and do that today, and if that happens, great.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, well, I'll just try and do that tomorrow. So then I would find myself in my sessions going, yeah, I've really got to make sure I talk. I've got to open up to people, haven't I? I've got to. She's like, well, you're already setting yourself up for a failure, because if you find yourself in a position where you're not able to open up to somebody, you're then going to go, well, I didn't open up to them. I didn't.
Yeah, another thing to kind of berate yourself about.
I didn't do it, and I would really beat up on myself, and really, I was, trying to process it all myself, and I didn't really know how to process that. I needed to blurt things out to somebody and have them dissect pieces and look at it. And my first counsellor said to me, would you ever talk to your friends the way that you talk to yourself? And I really felt that pulled me up short, because I'd never really thought about how I speak to me, because of course I would never talk to my friend in that sort of way.
I don't think we think about that. When it comes to being kind to ourselves, we might think about what we eat, or how much we drink, or we forget about the internal dialogue, which is basically, unless you find a way of stilling your mind or meditating or giving yourself some space, it's constant all day long, the internal chat in your head, which if it's negative towards you, 24/7.
Yeah, and I found it was very easy to be hard on myself. That was a much easier way of coping. Well, I thought it was an easier way of coping. It wasn't. It was exhausting. It was exhausting me. It was not good. I would just.
But people do
fly off the handle. Just small things that.
Do you think it's because if you don't know what's going to happen if you don't do that?
Yeah, it's nice to control it. It's easier to not face a feeling than it is to visit a feeling and see where that will take you.
Yeah.
And I can remember you and the girls coming round one day, and I can't remember if I was in like part 1 of my counselling or part 2 of my counselling, and I had said to her that you were all coming round, and she's like, do they know how you are? Do they know that you're having these sessions? And I was like, no, not really. I might say. And she's like, so they're your friends and they love you? I said, well, yes, they're my friends and they love me very much. I love them very much. And she's like, why don't you try to open out to them? And I can remember you all coming round and we all had lunch, and it was so much easier for me for it to go round to the 5 of us and we all have our turn, see how we are. And I was thinking, oh God, it's going to get to the end and everyone's going to go, and I'm not going to say it, but I can't just suddenly go, I don't know, counselling. Because it was so much easier to just ignore it. And then I think a couple of the girls had gone and you were still there, and we put the kettle on and you went, so, and I'm sure I had a moment in the kitchen of going,
I remember it being in the kitchen, yeah.
And then I spoke to her afterwards, and she was like, well, she goes, and were they horrible to you? And did they say it? And I was like, well, no, that she gave me a hug and it was fine. But there's something about that fear of being vulnerable and showing. I find that very hard. My default is to power through, be organised and have the control and when an element changes that you can't control and you're having feelings that you can't put a lid on. So, you know, we've been friends a long time. We've shared many things and spoken about lots of things, but that fear to show a friend how what it, you know, is difficult and becomes easier over time. That was very early on in that kind of process.
As someone like yourself who is headstrong and proactive and likes to keep a handle on everything, you feel that it was invaluable? Is it safe to say?
Yeah, absolutely, because it was easier for me to cry and let go in front of a stranger than it was to anybody that was close to me.
And letting somebody...
It was really difficult, and letting somebody
help, I guess.
Letting somebody help is really difficult. I find asking for help a very difficult thing to do, really. And kind of having somebody to be able to talk to within those sessions, it's kind of helped me kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
It was really helpful. I still struggle to do it now. It's always easy to just cry by yourself in the shower.
Oh, no.
Always in the shower. Why is that? But yeah,
I don't know, but we all do it. I don't know whether we think that asking for help is a weakness or
probably
means that we're not coping, and yet it's nothing to do with the definition of coping or not. It's just, I think, human nature that sometimes you just need someone to hold you up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
And as far as, well, gosh, I mean, 3 years is, I would imagine, I'm relating it to other things that I've gone through in my life, but not specifically to do with a parent dying, but 3 years can be like 5 minutes as far as grief or as far as the process is concerned. But where you're at now, or where the last 3 years have taken you, do you ever sense your dad around? Do you have any feeling of what you think happens next? Or
I do. It's, for me, I like to think that he is always here. He's here in me. He's here in my children. Just kind of traits that I see, even with Lillian. Obviously, you know, she never knew my dad, and I see her do things and think, that's my dad. How have you got my dad's character? How have you got that? How have you've just walked into the room and done a silly dance and you've run out again? That's my dad. That's what he does. When I was training for the marathon, my dad had run various marathons through his lifetime. And it was something that I'd always wanted to do, and I'd always spoken to him about wanting to do it and wanting to run the London Marathon. And he was always very much, yeah, you could do that, you know, and I'd help you train. He's like, you know, I wouldn't be able to run with you. It's like, oh no, my knees are shot. I can't do that. But if you ever get your place in a marathon, he goes, well, I'd help you. I'd get on my bike and I will go on some. I would bike alongside you when you're doing your long runs. We even spoke about doing that even when he was in hospital towards the end. He was still talk about that. And so when I got my last minute place to run the marathon the year after he died, and actually a lot of my latter marathon training, I don't know, maybe the beginning part, I was still having my counselling session, so it was very good to be able to talk through a lot of it with my counsellor at the time. But one thing I was desperately sad about, the fact that I was getting to do this thing that I wanted to do my whole life, but not be able to share that with him. I was like, I was running on my own and running on my own. And I remember one day in the middle of a really, really long run, trying to lap around this park to just try and add in a few more miles. I was like, I can't do this, I can't do this. This is too tough. I just don't know how I'm going to get through this. And with that, this elderly gentleman cycled past me with a head full of grey hair. My dad always had a head full of grey hair unless he was trying to diet with his just for men. And he cycled past me and kind of gave me a bit of an acknowledgement. And I was like, I feel that that person was meant to be here with, you know, who knows where that man was going to or from. But in that moment, I needed something.
Yeah.
And that happened. And I was like, that's Dad. That's my dad. I know that is. That's him by this man who I do not know. Biking past, and I didn't see any other cyclists in the park on the rest of the run. And I ran around that park loads of times in my training, and never again did, you know, sorts of dog walkers, but not
in that moment. That was the perfect.
In that moment, that was the perfect thing. Or if I've been thinking about him, I get into the car and I turn on the radio, and he like that stupid. Hit me with your rhythm.
Jimmy, Jerry, somebody.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And yeah, and that's come on the radio before.
And that's a random song to hear on the radio.
And
I'm
that's
sorry,
a random song.
I never hear it on the radio.
That's a random song, and and I have an obsession with robins, as we were drinking out of our robin mugs. Because there are times, and it's not just me, my mum has had it as well. And she's looked out the garden at certain times where very tame little robins seem to appear and sit with us for a moment and then fly off. Tame little robins that walk alongside the road with me as I'm pushing the pushchair. Robins that flew onto the table outside when we first moved into our house.
See, I've never had a robin like hop by me when I'm walking down the street. Like, no, my point being, I'm with you. I don't think those little signs are coincidences.
Yeah.
And that's never happened to me. So
yeah.
It's not like a common occurrence for people to have little robins kind of join them during the day. But were you with your dad when he died?
Yes. Yeah, strange drive back down the motorway, strange arrival at the hospital, and just seeing a man who you idolise and think of as being a very strong, fit, well person, just none of those things. Just seeing their body failing them, and that's very, very sad and very frustrating and very sad, really.
Was there anything in being able to share his final moments with him? Was there anything in that experience that you took from that helped you following it, or? In the last few days before he died, I would really struggle each night going home. Back to Mum and Dad's. Mum would be at the hospital because I was worried that I was going to miss something or not be there. But yet at the same time not really knowing how I would find being there.
he slept really the whole day leading into before he died, and probably about half an hour before he did die, I know I certainly suddenly felt a need that I was too far away in the room and needed to be, not a big room, but I felt that I needed to be just next to him, just kind of knowing. And he suddenly came into a form of consciousness, and I could see him looking around the room to see who was there. So I was like, no, I'm here, Dad's here, we're all here. I could see him looking, and my mum's chatting to somebody at the door. And he was looking for where she was. And but he didn't seem, it wasn't in pain, he was ready, and he just kind of needed us to be able to say it's okay, we know, we love you very, very much, but it's okay. And he really searched my mum's face. She said, it's okay, Martin. She said, Jesus is waiting for you. You go, it's going to be okay. He's waiting for you, and you're going to be okay. And he just let go. He just released his body, and I did see I saw his soul leave his body. He didn't just die, he didn't just stop, he didn't...
Yeah.
Something went. It wasn't... Yes, it was final because he died and he was no longer breathing, but something happened. The calm in his body, the letting go, and is something that was amazing to see. It was, I don't know how I expected watching somebody die to be.
Yeah.
I don't think I expected it to be that. And I do know and feel that he is in heaven. He is somewhere at peace. That's where he is. Yeah, it was very sad, very sad moment, but wonderful moment. It's not wonderful because he died, but I'm sure there are far more distressing ways for your final moments to be, and it wasn't a painful, distressing moment for him, I don't think, really. So I kind of find some peace with that.
Yeah.
Really.
Thank you, my love.
Yeah.
I think you're amazing, and I'm sorry that the battery kept running out. And I can't tell you how brave I think you are for talking about it. And I know that this is going to help somebody out there who's watching it, at least to know that they're not the only person that has maybe felt the way they feel. Is there anything else you want to say?
Just, if you're experiencing grief or anything that's you're feeling is tough in life, be brave, be kind to yourself, and seek some help through a friend, through a doctor, through the Samaritans, anyone that any way you can, because there is help there if you're brave enough, and you can be brave to go and do it. It's not going to be easy, and I'm not cured, and it's still something that I'm working through every day, and every year I will be, because grief is something that I'm learning is probably around forever. It's just there in varying degrees. But seeking help is not failure. I think it can really give you a lifeline when you feel that you possibly haven't got one. And look out for robins. But not all robins are Martin.
Not all robins are Martin, though.
Only the tame ones.
Love you.
Thank you. Tell me the truth. Tell me my truth. Tell me what the truth feels like. This is my truth. Truth. This is my truth. Tell me the truth. Tell me what the truth feels like. This is my truth. Truth.
So, it's the end of the day. I've had time to reflect on my conversation with Tash. If you've made it to the end of this video, then you'll know that she's not the kind of person who finds it easy to open up. She was so truthful and honest, and I'm so proud of her for being so brave. I've learned that as friends, when we don't always know how to comfort somebody or what to do, it's enough to just be there and to not expect anything in return. It's also reiterated something I already knew, which is that we have to listen to our bodies, because like the pain that she had in her hands, and I've experienced it with anxiety, our bodies will always tell us if we're not facing something or acknowledging something. If we don't notice the little signs along the way, our bodies will tell us when something needs to be addressed or something is disconnected or out of kilter. I think there is a real beautiful, quiet strength that comes from our vulnerability, from allowing ourselves to be open and to be truly seen. I think sometimes we worry about what other people will think about us, what other people will discover about us, will they judge? None of that really matters. For me, the important thing is that when we allow ourselves to be open and vulnerable, that is when we get to learn more about ourselves. And in doing that, and in knowing ourselves better, we can then try and live a more authentic life. After all, don't we all just want to be understood and truly seen? Something to think about. I hope you'll come back and join me for my next video. Who knows what it's going to be about? I'll keep you on your toes. But please come back and join me again soon, and thank you so much for watching this. Bye.